Hungary is testing Europe's unity by pushing back on sanctions against Russia. Now, while EU ministers have been calling for tougher measures, Hungary argues the existing ones just aren't working. Now, tensions between Hungary and the EU have been growing for years now. The European Parliament said Hungary can no longer be considered a democracy. Brussels has threatened to cut billions of dollars in funding over alleged corruption as the divide between Budapest and Brussels deepens. Richard Quest spoke to Hungary's Minister of Foreign Affairs. He asked Péter Szijjártó why sanctions should be lifted.
Look, I think we are speaking about facts. If you impose sanctions against someone, then it should be more harmful on the targeted entity and not on yourself. And unfortunately, the sanction policy of the European Union in this regard has failed, because those sanctions which were introduced against Russia are more harmful and more painful to Europe than to the Russian Federation. That's a fact, unfortunately. And you know, the European economy is moving towards recession. That has not been the case for a very, very long time. The safe supply of energy is just a kind of memory for us in Europe. Inflation is skyrocketing. The prices of food and commodities have been increasing. Utility costs are in the skies. So we definitely need a solution, because the European people are not responsible for this war. So that's why we should not force the European people to pay the price of this war. When it comes to Hungary...
okay. But if sanctions were to be lifted, and there will be those who do disagree with you, by the way, or that it's not hurting Russia more than the EU at the moment. So there will be there is others who will say you're wrong on that point. But for the purposes for moving forward, what would you have done instead then? Because there seems to be a view that Hungary is more on the side of Russia than on the side of the EU and its partners.
Yeah, but you know, this accusation must be rejected very, very harshly, because we Hungarians have condemned the war from the very beginning. And we have not vetoed any sanction regime so far. So all 7 sanction regimes which have been in place have been voted by a unanimous decision in the European Union. So had we not supported these packages of sanctions, they would not have been introduced and would not be enforced currently. We have made it very clear, though, that we are not ready to put our safe supply of energy at risk. No way. You know, the energy supply in Europe, especially in Central Europe, is being determined by geography and by infrastructure. And currently, physically, it's impossible to supply our country safely by oil and gas if we phase out the Russian sources of energy.
So what would you do to bring the necessary force, such as it is? You're not supplying weapons, you're not allowing transshipment through Hungary, you are now calling for a reduction or an elimination of sanctions. What would you do as Hungary to help prosecute against Russia in the case of Ukraine?
You know, first I would like to say 2 things. First, I regret that the list was not continued, because in the meantime we have been carrying out the largest ever humanitarian action of the country, and we have received 1.5 million refugees from Ukraine already. And for all those who are entering the territory of our country, we are giving all kinds of assistance and help, including jobs and similar equal access to schooling and healthcare like to our own citizens. This is number 1. Number 2, what should have been done? Look, I think much more efforts should have been done in order to create peace finally. Because if you ask me, what is the ultimate solution for all the problems we have to be faced with because of the war and because of the sanctions, then the solution is one word. It's peace. And here we are in New York. The United Nations General Assembly...
No, hang on a second. That's easy to say, Minister, the solution is peace. But you had the Minsk agreement, you had the various talks, you even had Emmanuel Macron and the UN Secretary General going to Moscow and to Kyiv. In the real world, do you support Ukraine in its territorial integrity?
Obviously, territorial integrity and sovereignty must be the basic principles of international politics and international law. There is no compromise. We definitely stand by Ukraine. We stand by their territorial integrity and sovereignty. But peace is needed. So that's why from the very, very beginning of this war, we have been advocating for immediate ceasefire and launching the peace talks. We have even offered Hungary as a location, a safe, fair location, ensuring level playing fields for all participants and stakeholders. But negotiations should be started. And you know, here we are in New York. General Assembly is on. What would be the most appropriate? What would be the widest platform where such kind of negotiations could take place, if not the UN? The UN was created in order to ensure the possibility of discussion and dialogue between those countries and actors who are hostile to each other. So why do not we enter into negotiations? Why do not we promote more the peace, and why do not we make more efforts in order to create peace finally? That could prevent thousands and tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people from suffering and escaping from their homes. It's heartbreaking to see those torn apart families who are entering Hungary, mother with the children without fathers. It's heartbreaking.
Were you horrified by President Putin's comments yesterday, essentially threatening a nuclear option?
Well, of course. I mean, all kinds of decisions, all kinds of statements which are going towards the escalation of this war constitute bad news. So, you know, and that's why we say that we are in the 25th hour.
Hang
so
on.
this statement,
You're not
this
exactly,
yesterday
Minister.
put us in
I've
the 25th hour, and we have to finally solve this crisis.
I've heard other ministers, foreign ministers, the UK, US, etc., roundly condemning the comments of President Putin as being a gross escalation. You're talking about it as being bad news, like he's just given you the bad weather forecast.
Well, if you want me to say anyone threatening with a nuclear war, we definitely do condemn. No question. So nuclear war is something that we never want to experience, and we want this planet to be preserved for our successors. No one would like to destroy that. So, of course, threatening with nuclear war, coming this threat from any side, must be condemned in the harshest way.
Yes, that's fantastic.
Was it the president? Was it the US?
Yeah, the president. Yeah. He was coming out from the UN and heading somewhere.
Yes, we've got a whole week of this. I mean, I can't.
Yeah. I mean, day free is no problem, but not for 30 minutes. You
30
know.
minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
How are you?
Well, struggling, I have to tell you, with all the consequences of the war and the consequences of the sanctions and the skyrocketing prices.
I understand Hungary's difficulty. I mean, you're caught, but
we are too close, you know.
But you've got a good accommodation in terms of continuing to be able to buy oil and gas.
Yeah.
So you've got relief in that sense.
Actually, we have a good agreement with Gazprom, and so far they are delivering, you know, which is very important for us. If they don't deliver, then we can't run the country, because physically it's.
What options do you have elsewhere? I mean, how over time?
Azerbaijan would be an opportunity, but we need a lot of infrastructural development. Exxon has left a big project in Romania. We already had contract with them, which would have entered into force from the beginning of next year, 3 billion cubic meters every year. But they left the project, you know. So in Romania, there's a big field, but no one would like to exploit, you know. So because they said that financially it doesn't work out. I mean, okay, so how can we help them?
Well, I'm looking forward.
For what?
Well, a world of wonder. We're coming to Budapest.
You keep on telling
me
that for
it was on a list. It's on a list of the
yeah, but we are very, very far down on the list.
No, you don't. My only decision on when to go is when's the best time to go.
Oh, come on. It's always good time to come.
Ah, I knew you'd say that. I'll see you in Budapest.
You tell me the time and I wait.
You'll make the weather. You'll make the weather.
Yeah, we can manage. We can manage.
Lovely to see you.
With the 2/3 majority, you can manage anything.
Oh.
Take care. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.